Hi everyone, welcome to Prevention Education, the podcast that teaches you everything about prevention. Thanks for listening, and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to another Prevention Education podcast. As always, this is your host Kylie Lemberger, and I am here with a very special group this week. So if everyone would like to introduce yourselves, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Juris Shaheen. I'm a performance improvement specialist with Preferred Family Healthcare, the CQI department, which is now, I believe, Brightly. And I do a lot of different things, but today I'm here to talk a little bit about the IDEA committee, IDEA standing for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Awareness. And I'm very excited to be here today. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Perfect.
Hi,
go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, I'm Kim Bilbrey. I am the Disease Management Supervisor for the Greater St. Louis area with Preferred Family Healthcare, and I am on the same committee as Jerry for the IDEA committee, and I am looking forward to being here today as well.
Hello, I am Kiki Rover. I'm Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Started on the borough side, but now on Brightly, and I cover the Southwest region.
Yes, we are so lucky to have all of these individuals on our podcast today. And so we will start our podcast with our typical kind of get to know you segment. And our question today is, what plant would you choose to describe yourself? And so I will answer last. But what do you guys think? What plant describes you the best?
Well, I don't really know too much about plants, so this is a great question, a tricky question, but I can tell you a favorite plant of mine. So I was born and partially raised in Israel, and there is a plant there that's very native to the area, and it's the Rose of Sharon. It's this beautiful kind of flowering flower. It's a flower, and it's like a crimson red. It's not a rose. It's almost fabricy, like it looks really, really beautiful. Most people know what it is, but it's cool to see it like dispersed all just in natural wildlife there. So I would say that's maybe a favorite plant.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
Sorry, Kiki. You want to go? You can. Okay. All right. So I'm going to say I'm not necessarily a plant, but I would say I am a sunflower. That's what I feel like I am.
I like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's pretty good. I can see that for you too, Kim. I think that I would be a aloe vera plant.
Okay.
I mean, go ahead, utilize the product of aloe vera because it helps soothe things over and help people feel a little bit better. So,
yeah, another great answer. I don't think my answer is as great as any of these. But I just got an elephant bush the other day. It's a succulent, and I just really love them, and I love the name. And so I would say it describes me a lot. I think I need a lot of sunlight. I burn easy, but my husband likes to say sunlight gives him energy. He's solar powered. That's what it is. And so I think this sounds great. So I would say I'm an elephant bush. But yeah, okay, cool. Well, thank you guys for sharing all of that. That was a little fun segment. So to get into our topic today, what we're going to be talking about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the abbreviation for that is DEI. And so if you guys want to share a little bit about what that is or what you guys do in the DEI world, that would be really great.
Absolutely. I'll kind of break down a little bit of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. It is a part of my everyday language. So I make sure that I try to explain it to others quite often. So diversity is really all the ways that we differ from one another. It's our lens is made up of how we view the world, how I might view it different from the person next to me based on the identities that I carry. So that's diversity. It's all the ways that we're different. Equity is more of when you take the time to realize that certain groups may not have been given fair opportunity, and you give them what they need in order to be successful or to be their best human, and that's equity. And then inclusion is more of not just providing the equity and recognizing the diversity, but it's the act, it's the conscious choice to be more aware, to help someone feel like they are a part of something, that they are part of the team, the group, whatever it is, but they also feel seen and celebrated as well. So I kind of like to say that, like, diversity is, being invited to the party, right? Equity is making sure you have a ride to get to the party. And then inclusion is more of you got a ride to get to the party and you had the invite, but we're also going to make sure that the DJ plays your favorite jam. So that's kind of how I like to word diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, I really like that example. I think it's very kind of relevant. It's a very relevant example. So if you don't remember the definitions, or if you don't know how to explain to someone, that's a wonderful way to explain it kind of in normal terms, I guess. Yeah, thank you, Kiki. Does anyone else have anything else on kind of what is DEI?
Yeah, I think just, to look at on the committee a little bit and what we've wrapped our definition around, our mission statement, the values that we try to live out. Um, Part of the mission statement is to promote an enriching and supportive climate. So if as an agency we're wanting to reach or wanting to help clients reach overall health and wellness, much like Kiki was saying, a person going anywhere is not going to feel a great level of comfort or a great level of connection if there isn't an enriching and supportive climate there. So if the environment is exclusive, not inclusive, if the individuals or the team is unsure how to navigate certain topics, or even just certain body language or anything that might have to do with culture or racial background or any type of um, societal element, then the client might not be able to breach or break that barrier to achieve overall health and wellness. So removing some of those barriers out of the way, sometimes the subconscious barriers, sometimes agencies might not even think of looking into certain areas of their policies or their procedures or anything like that. So part of the committee's job, as well as what we think like everyone's role would be in that kind of enriching um, environment, is to work on strategic planning, work on programmatic development, empowering clients and the staff in the building to be inclusive, to create that community of connection. Not everyone's going to get it right. So grace is a really big part of it. It's constant learning, a learning cycle. So giving oneself grace, even in meetings, if something slips out and you're like, oh, that's not something I really wish to say anymore, or it could be uh, impactful or hurtful to someone. So I want to maybe rein that back in. So looking at terminology, looking at language, really honoring all cultures when we know that our communities are constantly changing. So whoever we're serving and the depth in which we're serving them in, it's constantly changing. So we can't fear that change. We got to be part of that change as well. I can get into a little bit later too, more of the specificity behind how the committee has done this and steps and different tasks. But I'd say overall, that's kind of the orientation of what we're looking at.
Yeah, all of that is wonderful to know. And for our listeners, I just want to put in the kind of prevention side. You might be wondering how this can tie into prevention, and the answer is it ties in every single way. In the prevention world, you are face to face with your community, you're face to face with individuals every single day. And in order to make them feel like they're a part of your community, in order to reach them and potentially some of the lowest moments, it's important to know for them to know that you're there for them no matter what. It doesn't matter who they are, what their background is. You're there to care for them as a human. And so in the prevention realm, especially if you work for a PRC, which is a prevention resource center, and you're trying to help create coalitions. And coalitions, I like to describe them as, if you think of in high school, you have like student council, you have like key club, little groups here and there. And coalitions are kind of like the little groups in high school. You're really passionate about something, you want to change something in your high school or community. And so coalitions are like little groups where you can start something small and eventually make a really big difference in your community. So having diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind when you're starting to create a coalition, when you're starting to get stakeholders in your community, and stakeholders are people that are passionate about your cause. They can really be anyone in your community, teachers, firefighters, a mom, a dad, any caregiver, even youth. All those people are really great stakeholders. And so you want to make sure that you get people from all different backgrounds, have all different stories to help your cause at the end of the day. So do you guys have any questions about like prevention and DEI that I can answer for you guys in this moment? And if not, that's okay too.
I mean, I always am curious different programs and the different initiatives and coalitions that are happening throughout the agency, because we've got so many different wheels turning at any given point. I use the word depth a lot when I'm in meetings because I see just how far reaching our services go and like the communities and the neighborhoods that we get into, even through telehealth in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So the concept that prevention is aiming to really be in as many places that it can be is really encouraging to bring to clients resources right in front of them, whether through social media or any kind of initiative that they set up or task force that they may set up. So I'm always curious as to the depth in which you know can describe the services that you provide.
Yeah, that is a really great question.
Thanks.
A lot of people don't really understand our specific prevention work, and I get it. When I first got the job, I was really confused on what we did. But our main goals so our Kirksville location for our Prevention Resource Center serves 27 of the northern counties of Missouri. And our main target is to reduce substance use in youth. And our three main substances that we target are nicotine, marijuana, and alcohol. So we put out a bunch of messages on how to have conversations with youth around those topics. And then our coalitions are the ones that really dive into the community to solve those issues or to even kind of get ahead of the issues. And so what they do is they focus on their little square inch of the world, and they have events, they put on so much stuff to just get information out there on why you shouldn't be using nicotine when you're underage or why you shouldn't be drinking underage and just the impacts that it can have on your health. And our goal, our hope, our mission is to save lives. So hopefully if youth don't start using, then they won't start using later in their lives and they can just have a healthier life. And then if we start that cycle when they're younger, hopefully they can continue that cycle, pass that on, pass the healthy habits on to their youth and just continue to have a really healthy community. So that's kind of like my best prevention description. We do a lot of other small things that are kind of big, but like small things throughout the year that make some big impacts. But I think that pretty much describes kind of what we do.
I appreciate you explaining, and Jarius, I appreciate you asking the question because on my end, I've been, mostly on the Burl side and like being introduced to what PFH is doing. But there's not like a set, and I'm imagining too for you all trying to learn what Burl is doing. There's not like the set segue where you can learn piece by piece. It's just like you land into, meetings or with groups and you're like, okay, and what do you do? And then you learn this information. So that's really, really neat what you all are doing with prevention. And yeah, yeah, definite tie-in with DEI, of course.
Yes, it really is. And there was something said earlier that I wanted to come back to, and it was removing barriers for people in our community so that they can go down the avenues that they want to. How can we do that? And not just in the prevention world, but just in our communities, how can we help people to remove those barriers?
That is a big question.
Yes.
Okay, so moving barriers, when it comes to specifically the population that you're serving or reaching out to, I feel like one thing that we can all do, every human can do, is especially when we're talking about merging in DEI factors too, is recognize our own identities and our own positionality, and then the person that we're serving, their identities and their positionality as well. So if as a part of my identity, by being a heterosexual female and being Black, like I recognize that there is positionality in being heterosexual, right? But there's also marginalization by being a female and by being Black. And so if I step into a space with someone that I'm serving and I'm recognizing parts of their identity where they may be um, marginalized or they may be part of majority culture, then I could really get down to what is the need, what is the barrier, because sometimes that barrier is going to be beyond the s- stereotypical, oh, you just need to spend a little bit more time in this group. Well, what if I show up to this group and no one's dealing with the intersection reality of me being a Black female, and there's no one else in the space that looks like me? Well, I'm probably going to have a hard time engaging in that space. I'm probably going to have a hard time being authentic. I'm probably going to be worried about what words come out of my mouth. And if someone's, going to think that whatever I say is feeding into the stereotype of what people think about Black women. So if we don't realize our way and our lens of viewing the world and how the person across from us might be viewing the world, then we miss this opportunity to really look at what the barriers may be for that person. So if we don't look at someone's identities that they carry, or when we say things like, oh yeah, I don't see color, we do see color. We see people for who they are, and we see how they stand in front of us. If we don't recognize that I don't see color, or if we do recognize who that person is and the racial background or ethnicity that they carry, then we can start to see, okay, they're coming into this space where there's no one else that looks like them. How can we best keep them with our services? How can we best engage them so that they do feel safe? And what other protocol do we need to put into place so others that look like this person will feel safe too?
Yeah, all of that was really insightful. Um, I think it's so important. I like how you said if you look different than someone, than a group of people in the room, it can be kind of scary. You might not want to share your beliefs, but if someone kind of comes up to you and is like, "Hey, I am really happy that you joined us. Like, tell me a little bit about yourself." The littlest thing can make someone feel super comfortable in that space and can make them feel like it's a safe space to be in. So just acknowledging that they're there, that you see them, that you're happy that they're there, and just like the littlest effort can go a really long way. So
Yeah. And Kim actually, she is a trainer. If you wanted to speak on that a little bit, Kim, and providing kind of these safe spaces for individuals and for clients to experience that safety.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jerry. I actually can do or sorry, I was just thinking about CPR. I do safe zone trainings. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Safe Zone Initiative, but it is allowing me to go throughout Preferred and provide these trainings to have us staff and give staff the opportunity to work better with the LGBTQIA plus population. I work with them on facing those most fearfully asked questions, questions that people don't want to ask normally for LGBTQIA plus population. I address those head on and work with them to understand how best serving that population specifically to give them the best care and making sure that they're comfortable working with these individuals, because I don't want them to feel marginalized in their treatment when they have other situations going on. So going into the different sites and providing this training is not only allowing us to be a safe zone for our clients, but for the rest of the staff that we work with and everybody within the organization.
Yeah, I actually didn't know anything about that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. It's by far my favorite training that I do with Preferred. And it's something that I brought in my team originally because I thought my team needed it. We had a lot of trans clients that people were misgendering. So I brought it there. And then my old supervisor many moons ago suggested we start pushing it out within Preferred. And my current supervisor still likes me going out and providing it within the organization and anywhere possible because it's allowing us to bring that everywhere.
Yeah. Do people have to reach out to you to schedule those trainings, or do you just kind of make your rounds around Preferred?
I have people schedule with me. We have a link so that way they can just do a quick Google form and it comes straight to my inbox and I can work with the person directly to set up a time and a date. I can do virtual and I can do in person. Although I believe in person is more effective for this kind of training, I'm more than willing to do virtual if people are just not able to, or maybe they're a work from home site and it's easier for everyone to hop on virtually and get the training that way.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy that question that you posed about what does that look like? What can we do? Because I think it's kind of tiered, and you can tell a lot about a program or agency when you see just how deep they've gotten in the actionable steps. So, for example, the idea of building cultural awareness, building cultural sensitivity, understanding privilege. We can see those as, hey, we're on level one. We're like on the presenting problem level. And then once we start seeing programs go a little deeper, so through self-assessment, understanding their own cultural awareness, understanding what maybe they haven't been sensitive to in the past through their policy, through their programming, their services, and then trying to understand how can I put certain new practices in place to replace the prior practices that we maybe had. This last handful of quarters, the IDEA Committee has been putting out through our newsletter a little bit about building cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, and taking actionable steps. We used Carrie Fisher. She's a professor at Baylor University. It's a 7 E's model of building cultural humility. And each article talked about, like, okay, now you did this level, now let's go a little deeper. Now let's try to be part of a cultural event that you've never participated in. Or programmatically, you setting up and hosting space and providing that equitable space for these events and being part of the community in that sort of way. So really, providing things that maybe before we weren't able to provide or thought about providing. The really awesome thing that I think Kim has brought to the table is that it's a two-way street. So it's not only our staff that are now understanding of our clients. Kim is able to now understand that she is a highly skilled trainer in this area, whereas before that may not have been part of the job description. Now it's included as a passion and a skill that she has and houses and is able to utilize. So that movement from awareness to how do we build equity? What kind of tools can we build for our program? So I really enjoy that question.
Thank you. And something that you said made me think too. It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to say words, but the second you start doing things like this training, it's making a difference, and it's actually putting the words into action, and then sharing your knowledge to have other people share that knowledge even more. It's probably making the biggest difference in a lot of people's lives. So, yeah, I'm just thankful that that's going on, especially in the place that we work in. Um, and hopefully that can go to Burl or Brightly. And for our listeners, if you don't know what Brightly is kind of our two companies kind of merged into one. I would definitely recommend looking up Brightly if you don't know what it is, but it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful company with wonderful staff. So be sure to look it up if you don't know. And it's BRIGHTLI, I think. Normally I cannot spell on the spot, so I'm really proud of myself for that.
You
10 out of
did
10,
good. You did
100%.
good, Kylie. You did it.
Thank you guys. Thank you. So I have a question for you guys based on prevention. We are always wanting to improve, finding new ways to help our coalitions to grow and help our communities. Um, so say I'm starting a coalition and it's based on helping the youth in our community with one of our substances. How would you guys recommend making sure to get a diverse group of individuals on our coalition? Like, how would you reach out to the community? What kind of efforts would you do to make sure that happens?
I didn't know who wants to go first, so I'll go right ahead. Yeah, I think a huge part of our Office of DEI on the borough side, like on one side, there's the training and education that we do. The other side of that is the community work that we do. And we plug into these different groups that are geared towards marginalized folks, so we can learn more about what is it that the community needs. And so I think when you, as a preventative group, are working towards finding how to have a diverse team, a diverse group, you start with the organizations that are already hosting the spaces with marginalized folks. So you connect with them, you learn why do they have whatever group that they have or whatever organization that they have to meet what needs. And then that'll also tell you a lot about the barriers too, when you start to build that relationship and build rapport with those groups. But I will also go to say that getting the diverse folks to the table is only half the battle. The other half is maintaining that. So if we are inviting diverse folks to be amongst our groups, we also have to be intentional about how we keep them, because we can't assume that everything that we've done before is just going to work for everyone, right? That means that we also have to look at how we engage, what policies we have in place. Are our policies inclusive? What language do we allow amongst one another? How do we have what do we call it? Call it in? Like, how do we call in someone when something has been said that might be harmful to the next person? Yeah, so I think a big thing would be connecting to the groups in your communities that already have programming around or for marginalized folks. And then the second half of that is making sure that you have the space for those marginalized folks to thrive and be their best self.
Thank you for mentioning that maintaining part, because when I'm thinking of getting a group together, I'm just thinking, how can we initially get people here with their own stories, with their passions? And I didn't really think about how can we keep that group coming every week. And so thank you for mentioning that, because that'll definitely impact how I kind of interact with my future groups and try to get them to keep coming back and showing up and showing me their passion in what they're trying to start. So thank you for mentioning that. That, again, very insightful for me. Does anyone else have any kind of thoughts on this specific topic?
I do not. I'd have to agree with Kiki. I think that's the exact way we would go about engaging folks to get the longevity of a new program getting started.
Yeah, I would add, in the exploration stage of it, you are in a sense looking for the kikis out there, meaning like the directors of DEI, the individuals that are already in those spaces with those positions, with those titles, because they've already maybe had the experience or the training, or they've got files and files of things that have already worked before for various programs. To explore. And I love kind of going through LinkedIn because it shows you similar roles. And sometimes there's titles out there that you wouldn't have thought this is a DEI title, but yeah, it very much operates in that wheelhouse, and you never know what you'll run across. But in regards to outside of just like what looks nice and readily available to bring into a team or committee, um, oftentimes our committee has found, not just our committee, but like the CQI department has found that when there are opportunities and processes for voices to be elevated, that's when you're also connecting with the person. So we have, for example, a tips form at Preferred. It's thoughts. Um, so people can submit their thoughts, improvements, problems, and solutions. Stands for tips. We also have our surveys, client surveys, and we peruse through those. And sometimes they might be related to identity, diversity, sometimes racial tension, sometimes an incident that happened, what have you. Um, whether it's from a staff perspective or a client perspective. So sometimes when we provide those vehicles for those messages to be connected to departments, we're also able to find the person behind that voice and elevate or build that equity there and try to position that person in a way to where their voice impacts not just the immediate crisis or situation, but impact the whole program, impact the whole policy, impact the whole agency in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I think you said that very well. Um, so before we come to our final statements to the end of the podcast, I just wanted to give you guys space. Is there any other thing in the DEI/prevention world that you guys want to bring up this episode? I'm sure we'll have more episodes in the future, but I just wanted to leave some time if you guys wanted to bring up anything.
I just want to say how cool it is that we get to have this conversation around prevention and DEI, because really DEI lives in every space, kind of like Jarius was saying before. It lives in every space, and all of us benefit when there are inclusion practices in place. And when we think about our, like I said before, when we think about our positionality and where folks who have marginalized identity, and I'm specifically, when I say marginalized identities, I'm talking about folks who historically have not had opportunity to thrive. And so we're talking about people of color, we're talking about LGBTQIA plus, we're talking about people who where English is their second language. Folks who are immigrants, folks who have a different ability, or and the list can go on and on and on, but it's anyone who carries an identity that's not a part of majority culture. And anytime you take some self-reflection and you take ownership of your positionality and where that person might be on the margins, then you can start to think about what challenges may be before them. So as long as you, what I like to call your DEI lens, as long as you can flip that on from time to time and recognize who the person is across from you, then you start to think more of what are their needs, what are the barriers. It's not, one size fits all for everyone, because if I was to show up in a space and just had large t-shirts for everyone, some of the folks in the room will be like, "You didn't think about me at all. You want to give me this free t-shirt, but this means nothing to me because I can't even wear it, you know?" But if I came in and just said, "Hey, what size shirt do you wear?" And I also said, "How about you help me design this shirt?" That makes a world of difference, and that quickly builds rapport with folks, and give them the opportunity to be their authentic self. So, um, as much as we want to think that everything just should fit everyone, when we really start to break things down, put on our DEI lens, and look at humans for all the different ways that we make up this population, then we could start in honoring who those different humans are.
Yeah, once again, wonderfully said. Um, it made, when you were speaking, it made me think too. I think a lot of society thinks I don't need to change, but other people do. Um, and with interactions, we are both changing each other in positive ways, but also I think it's important to focus on having a conversation with someone. Our goal is to not change others. In fact, sometimes the goal can be what they're saying. How can it change me? How can I reflect upon that and become a better version of myself? How can I be more inclusive? How can I um, be a better human to those around me? And so I really like the DEI lenses. I think that's wonderful. And just making sure that you're reflecting on yourself and how you are looking at others, I think is really big, really big. So perfect. Well, we will try to start wrapping it up. If everyone could give me one final statement of what you want the listeners to end with, that would be really great.
Well, that's a really great question. Just leaving everybody off with a statement or something to take away, take away from the podcast today. I think just being ready and being prepared and open and okay for what any kind of change may look like or feel like for you at any given moment, meaning um, whether a person is listening right now and um, they're in a whole different company. They're not preferred listeners. They're not rural listeners. They're not Brightly listeners. Um, that they're hearing these maybe to them new ways of thinking or new tools they've never thought of, to be open to try to understand what could that dialogue look like for me, and then how could that be replicated for anyone that may be listening from our wonderful companies and our larger organization, is to also just have that readiness for equipment, that readiness to be equipped for any sort of language change, process change, procedural change, and to be open to have not just DEI or IDEA be part of the dialogue, but to broaden their scope of what your agency does and the far-reaching nature of it. I'll be the first to tell you, like there's sites, programs don't have never heard of the IDEA committee or DEI. There's some that have never heard of prevention or what they do, like you said earlier. So constructing those ties, creating those ties to be much stronger and being ready and prepared for that.
I would say that my final words are always speak your truth and work with others to help them understand that it's okay to have diversity. It's okay to be different from others. That allows us to have different ways of thinking and grow within ourselves.
I think my last thing is just when we practice inclusion, everyone benefits from it. So sometimes or lately, I feel like there's been this play on society to where you feel like you have to give up something to practice inclusion, and you don't. What I like to say is, we think of privilege being such a bad thing, but what happens if we actually share our privilege? It doesn't have to be something negative. It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be this dark cloud that comes over you going, oh no, I've got privilege. What do I do? It's what if we start to share our privilege, and what that looks like is if I know that my friend is Q plus and I say something about my relationship, it's also opening the floor for them to talk about their relationship as well. So it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be daunting. It doesn't have to be super difficult either. It's really just honoring humans, other humans, recognizing how we differ and celebrating how we differ. And then once we can do that, we honestly all benefit, grow, and that's how we make systemic change as a whole. So,
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for leaving our listeners on those statements. I think if you're listening, share this with a friend, listen to it again so you can maybe learn one more thing new. I know I learned a lot during this podcast. So thank you guys so much, to all three of you guys for teaching me, for listening to me talk about prevention as well, and just for kind of becoming a team together. I really appreciate you guys taking your time to be here today. So thank you to our listeners. We hope that you guys tune in next week, and we hope you have a great week. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a good one.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into our podcast. Remember to follow us on social media at PFH Prevention. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Spotify, and more podcasting platforms. And make sure to email us at moprevention@pfh.org with any questions, and feel free to call us at 660-627-7404. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.